Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
I want to see the inquiries of what all happened to my daughter. I want to see videos of what happened to my daughter. I think I'm owed all this.
3 hours before we were supposed to do our tests, I got an email that it had been canceled and I had to reschedule. We drove to the Walgreens. We were there when it opened. We spoke with the pharmacist there and asked if he had any tests, and he said that, they were all out.
I'm really grateful to be swimming again. I wish my whole team could be there.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a CBC exclusive. A Windsor family is desperate for answers. They say their loved one, an inmate at the Southwest Detention Center, died 2 weeks ago from a cardiac arrest. But the family is upset because she shouldn't have been there in the first place. A psychiatric assessment had determined she needed a bed in a treatment facility.
The system sucks. It's failed. It's failed so many people that's got mental health issues.
A father's grief palpable. Tamara Frances Lucier died over the Christmas holidays as an inmate, even though she was supposed to be in a psychiatric facility for mental health support. Now the family wants to know, why didn't that happen?
I lost my daughter. And here today, I still haven't had an answer. Not an apology from Southwest Detention Center, not even, to say what happened, just to clear somebody's mind what happened.
Tamara had been battling mental illness for years. She was facing a number of charges, ranging from assault to mischief. She was in the middle of working out a plea bargain when a psychiatric assessment was ordered.
She wasn't physically dangerous, but she didn't know much. She didn't quite know reality. And subsequently, she was diagnosed as not being fit to stand trial.
The report, dated December 9th, 2.5 weeks before she died, recommended treatment for a period of 60 days. But her lawyer says there were no beds available, so the court decided she remain in custody. The facility cited in the report as a possible place for Tamara to go was the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health Care in St. Thomas. The center confirmed they've been dealing with reduced capacity related to the impact of Omicron on staffing levels, and there is a wait list for a bed.
It's a horrible situation. I haven't been able to sleep myself.
Tamara managed to get out on bail briefly to be with her family, but she breached the terms and was rearrested. She died shortly after that.
You don't even know I went hysterical. To hear my daughter was gone when she should have been safe.
The Ministry of the Solicitor General would only confirm that an inmate died on December 28th without identifying Tamara. They won't comment further because a number of investigations are underway. This inmate advocate out of Toronto believes Tamara's human rights were violated.
If someone really was not fit to stand trial, they needed health intervention and not a prison cell or a prison bed.
The family clings to the memory of her as a good and caring person.
She liked to color, and I liked coloring with her. I liked her around. We always hung out. We always shared makeup. We painted each other's nails.
The family is now relying on crowdsourcing to help fund a proper goodbye for Tamara as they continue to fight for more details about how exactly she died.
To have no answer what happened to my little girl is heartbreaking.
Whenever an inmate dies, the Office of the Chief Coroner conducts an investigation to determine cause and manner of death, the results of which the family is eager for. Turning now to the latest on schools. Local elementary teachers are feeling nervous about the return to in-person learning next week. On January 17th, staff and students will be heading back into classrooms and saying goodbye to virtual learning. Local elementary teachers say they are not prepared for this, and they're pointing to the fact that only about 36% of all children between the ages of 5 and 11 have received their first shot, and they are worried about a lack of air filtration.
The Ministry of Education is providing 3,000 additional HEPA filters for the whole province. That basically translates to one HEPA filter per school in this area. And as you know, in a school, there's multiple classrooms. So one HEPA filter, who is going to be the lucky class that gets that additional HEPA filter? And to be honest, I don't even know if they've arrived yet.
He says it'll be hard to guarantee there will be a teacher in every classroom because of a lack of support staff. He says it's also been difficult for some teachers to book a third dose appointment, and they're now waiting to hear from public health on whether teachers will be prioritized for booster shots. The uncertainty is worrying some parents across Windsor-Essex.
And even if like with the N95 mask and all that, it's hard for even teachers to wear that the whole day, right? I wear the N95 for a couple of hours and I have those masks for 2 days. So I don't expect that the teachers will wear every day for 6 to 7 hours in the school. That's not fair with them. As well as the kids, if they have double filter mask and all this, it's not really, I mean, during this cold, they cannot open the window and ventilation. That's crazy thing.
Khan says if either of her children do get sick, it will hurt the whole of the family mentally and financially. And she wants the government to give parents the option to opt out of in-person learning. She says that her kids won't get the opportunity to socialize much in person anyway, with the social distancing restrictions in place at schools. The U.S.-Canada border has remained open with some stipulations through this wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, but Canadians who have been choosing to cross are being warned to do so with caution. A testing crunch in the U.S. means you may not get your required testing back in time. Jacob Barker has more on that.
It was a family Christmas for Andrea Reyes, stateside.
We also got tested with rapid tests before we left, and my brother and sister-in-law were tested with rapid tests, all negative.
The trip by land to Illinois went off fine until they tried to make their way home. The test they were supposed to get with same-day results canceled at the last minute.
We were there when it opened. We spoke with the pharmacist there and asked if he had any tests, if he could somehow get us back on the list. He said that, they were all out.
Ray says she called pharmacies in neighboring states before giving up and deciding to try and cross without a test, thinking they may be let across if they agreed to a quarantine. Arriving at the border at 9 p.m., they found out crossing would only be an option if they accepted a hefty fine.
We obviously don't have $18,600 lying around for fines or for anything, really.
It being the holidays, the hotel they ended up finding was full. She believes it put them at further risk of contracting COVID-19.
It was fully booked. There was no mask policy at that hotel. Besides, it was just suggested that you wear a mask if you weren't fully vaccinated.
It has not got better. It just hasn't suddenly, resolved itself.
While the holidays have passed, the issues haven't. A surge in positive cases have put a pinch on tests in the U.S. While Canadians can still find a PCR test, the time to get the results often takes too long.
There is a shortage of rapid tests, rapid PCR tests, just like there's a shortage of rapid tests in Canada. Before, we were encouraging people to go. We'll give you a $75 test, go see your family. Not anymore, just chill for a little bit.
MP for Windsor West, Brian Massey, has been hearing from and advising some who have found themselves in a pinch have a plan, he says.
The Omicron virus has created increased complications with testing in Michigan, and you just become vulnerable to their system there.
Massey says he's not dissuading people from crossing, but the Public Health Agency of Canada says it continues to advise people not to travel for non-essential reasons. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
The Canadian Pharmacists Association's chief pharmacist says the recent discovery of ivermectin hidden by a patient treated for COVID-19 in a Windsor ICU is a scary situation. The anti-parasite drug was found inside a stuffed animal, according to a hospital memo. Dr. Danielle Pace said it could have led to severe complications for the patient.
And so when you see a situation like this, where a patient has brought in an additional therapy and the rest of the team is unaware, it puts into place the opportunity, or I shouldn't say opportunity, the risks of something going terribly wrong, because all the clinical decisions that are being made are absent of this missing piece of information.
Pace says it also speaks to the desperation people have for answers during a difficult health crisis. Both Health Canada and the World Health Organization have issued warnings about ivermectin, saying there isn't clinical evidence that it's an effective treatment option. Pace says if patients are researching their treatment options, they should check with a pharmacist to make sure it's safe for their health. CBC News has obtained copies of polling that the Ford government commissioned on its COVID-19 response. The surveys were paid for with tax dollars and show public support for the government's handling of the pandemic decreasing with each new wave. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has this exclusive story.
When COVID was killing hundreds in long-term care, when lockdowns shuttered businesses, or when schools were closed, at every stage of the pandemic, the provincial government has conducted weekly public opinion polls. The results were kept from the public until now. Polls from last spring show the government's approval rating sagged as the third wave built.
This is not going to be unique to the Conservative government in Ontario. Canadians as a whole are frustrated with the pandemic.
The polling is not all bad news for Doug Ford and his progressive Conservatives. Some demographics are more likely to say the government is on the right track. People without kids in the school system, low-income earners, new Canadians, and those living in the 905.
There's a real push-pull for the government in terms of trying to satisfy a larger group of Ontarians who seem to really be in favor of interventionist measures.
After the government announced its proof of vaccination plans for accessing indoor venues such as restaurants, 3/4 of those polled said they approved. Last summer, the pollsters asked whether COVID-19 vaccinations should be mandatory for kids to return to in-person classes. 70% of those polled said yes. Despite that, COVID vaccinations have not been mandated for Ontario schools. I asked the government how the polling factored into its pandemic decisions. In a statement, the Premier's spokesperson said all governments use polling to better understand public opinion on important issues.
This is just another example of this being a government and Doug Ford being a Premier who is obsessed about his political support rather than the importance of providing responsible and competent leadership to the people of Ontario.
The more important thing to do is to listen to the science and make decisions based on the well-being of the public and the managing of a global pandemic. And I think one of the things that has been problematic is that they haven't done that consistently from day one.
During the last fiscal year, the government spent nearly $700,000 on its COVID polling. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Another 2 deaths in our region today attributed to COVID-19. Both were women, one in her 70s, another in her 80s. Currently, 69 people are in hospital due to the virus, and 63 of those are at Windsor Regional Hospital, which today announced multiple COVID outbreaks at its facilities. 15 people have tested positive due to these outbreaks, and the Windsor Regional Hospital is asking anyone recently discharged from the facility to monitor themselves for COVID-19 symptoms. Now, outbreaks are linked to the following floors: 6 East Olette Campus, 2 North Olette Campus, 8 North Met Campus, and another 2 units, 7 North Olette Campus and 4 Medical Met Campus. They are on high alert. The pandemic has upended training for many athletes, but this week, good news for some local swimmers who've been itching to dive back into training. Some have been issued an exemption so that they're able to return to pools, while others are stuck on dry land. Stacey Janzer has more.
I'm really grateful to be swimming again. I wish my whole team could be there.
Jane Hartkowka is one of 8 swimmers with the Windsor Aquatic Club that was able to get back in the pool this week, granted a much coveted exemption under the provincial high performance regulation. At 15, she's been competing since she was 7. Before the pandemic, she would swim 7 times a week with meets at least once a month. Since March 2020, it's been virtual training, some time in pools, but not consistent.
And swimming especially, like getting the feel for that water back, and not even just as an athlete, like your physical ability, just mentally, like your confidence is just not there.
She says it's been tough for swimmers mentally.
So it's really hard to get up every day at 4 or 5 a.m., go to the pool and go through the motions when you know, like, your goal, you might not get to swim at that meet. You might not get to train like to your full potential.
Her coach says the difficulties have affected the club.
We are losing swimmers. We are losing athletes because they're just like, well, why bother starting to do it again when it's just going to get shut down again? And that takes away their passion for the sport.
Keeping the attention is something the Windsor Essex swim team is dealing with too. They have a single swimmer that can go back to training.
They really love their sport, swimming. So as soon as you remove the pool and seeing their friends and their teammates, it's definitely a tough situation.
Lee says he talks with the team once or twice a week to work on mental strategies. McWaugh says he's using dry land training for those who can't get back in the water. Hartkowka says that training will help them get better, but
it's really hard for me to say that to them when I get to swim and they don't. And I know that it's not possible for all of them to swim. I wish it was, but I just hope that they can keep going because it's so much better swimming with the whole team there.
Their next swim trial is in April, hopefully. Stacey Janzer, CBC News, Windsor.
Professional soccer could be coming to Windsor Essex. The former commissioner of the Canadian Premier League is looking to put a team together in the city as part of that league. The news is exciting the local soccer community.
I think in the short term, it brings a lot of excitement, brings a lot of belief. Just kind of uniting the people, which at this time I think is anything that unites us and brings us together, but kind of common message is fantastic and something we should promote. But I also think long-term, it brings investment, in the sport and the game we love. It brings passion, ahead of the 2026 World Cup that Canada's, hosting. I think we're going to build a lot of momentum here in Windsor, and hopefully we can, we know we're a soccer community. We can let everybody else around the province and the country know how big of a soccer community we are.
A new bus company is planning on starting a service between Windsor and London later this month. The company is called OnX Bus. That's short for Ontario Express Bus. They want to provide the service for $35 each way.
Oh, I'm thinking of doing a 8 a.m. departure out of Windsor, and then at 11:30 London departure back to Windsor. And then I'll run another one, most likely at 5 or 5:30 in the evening there at Windsor back to London, and then do a 9 o'clock out of London back to Windsor.
Details are still being worked out, but the plan would be to pick up and drop off passengers at the Via Rail station and the downtown Marriott in Windsor. Riders could catch a bus from London to Pearson Airport in Toronto. A stop in Tilbury is in the works along with Chatham. And another bus company tried the London and Windsor route last year but discontinued it. OnX expects to start the service January 20th. A live look outside there. It is chilly. I tried to go for a run this morning and the cold scared me back into my house. Tomorrow, luckily, we will get a high of above 0 with a chance of wet flurries or rain showers. Colette will be here. She'll have the full weather breakdown for us in just a little bit.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, it is cold and the wind is biting.
Yeah, that wind is something. And, you know, the wind is like such a big player in our forecast in terms of at the moment it's the wind chill, right? But then the winds are going to drive our temperatures up. Plus the winds kind of they tell us where the storms are going to be and how things are going to be pushing through our area. So I want to take you on a ride of sorts, an amusement ride, as we have a look at the roller coaster that is the jet stream. So generally dividing that colder air to the north from warmer air to the south. And we know, yeah, this morning at about -14 to -15 with temperatures, and that's not including the wind chill. We had the cold air in place. But what's happening now is as those winds are picking up from the south, we're getting into a pattern where that roller coaster pushes northward. We're now on the up climb with the temperatures and the ride, and that's going to last for a couple of days. But you know, when you go up on that roller coaster, you have to go back down. That will happen come Friday. So let's walk you through what's going on here. Our current temperatures there, we're now at -5. We're going to see that continuing to come up through the overnight hours. But for now, with those winds, it's still making it bitingly cold. Sarnia at -17, -14 for Chatham-Kent. And those gusts, now those are the current gusts, but let me show you some of the forecast gusts through the overnight tonight. Now, even by tomorrow morning, they'll begin to subside, but just know it's going to be a very blustery night tonight for anyone who does need to be out there on the roads, or you do some kind of shift work or essential worker, or you drive a high-profile vehicle. I always want to point out that those winds can be quite dangerous, and it's a little tricky navigating the roads with things like that. Now, a few flurries mostly to the north and to the northeast. So as we look ahead, I would love to tell you we have these warm temperatures that are going to be coming with sunshine, but that would not be the right forecast because unfortunately we'll have mostly overcast conditions and a slight chance for more flurries Wednesday. And we keep a lot of the cloud cover into Thursday too. It's not till late Thursday where we start to see some erosion of those clouds. So in terms of being able to enjoy it with sun, that's not looking very good. But watch those temperatures as they'll keep climbing here through the overnight hours and those winds as they keep ramping up as well. And we're looking at even tomorrow morning strong winds before those ease off. Temperature though, how about up to 4 degrees for our daytime high on Wednesday? And, you know, running a good 5 degrees or so above seasonal. And then on Thursday, we are also looking at that temperature mild there, Katerina, so 1 degree before, okay, yeah, for the weekend, cold will return. What a ride, right?
Exactly, a roller coaster ride indeed. Thanks so much for that, Colette. Now, when we return, the cat came back. An owner is reunited with her long-lost cat after 12 years. That story after the break. Adults who are unvaccinated against COVID-19 in Quebec are going to have to start paying a fee. Premier François Legault announced the so-called health contribution today. He says those who remain unvaccinated without a valid medical exemption are putting a burden on the healthcare network.
It's a question also of fairness for the 90% of the population who made some sacrifices. I think we owe them this kind of measure.
Legault says about 10% of Quebec adults haven't had their vaccinations, but they represent about 50% of intensive care patients. He didn't say how much the fee would be, but hinted it could be more than $50 or $100, enough to encourage people to get the vaccine. The Premier also says Quebec intends to expand the use of vaccine passports. There are 2,742 people hospitalized with COVID-19 in Quebec, including 255 in ICUs. There's a saying that your home is your castle. Well, for a Saskatchewan family, their castle is a home away from home. They've created a regal ice structure in front of their cottage. That is so cool. The personal palace is roomy enough for friends and family, and even includes a bar to enjoy a few drinks and a fireplace to sit around. The castle is pretty roomy as well. It is 10 meters long. That's about 35 feet and 3.5 meters or 12 feet wide. It'll probably last for a while as well. The bar countertop alone, it weighs 3,500 pounds, which works out to 1,600 kilograms. How cool is that? Now, I have to apologize. The story about the cat that came back, we weren't able to play it for you tonight due to some issues that we ran into, but you can read about that story. Just go to cbc.ca/Toronto. It's on Toronto's page, so you can read up on that, and hopefully maybe we can share it with you later this week. For more news from us, go to cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have a great night.